So this one was probably a recap from the video the other day when just mind thought, because you got to switch your mind from oxygen creating to freaking carbon creating, which is quite the tricky challenge. I'm not gonna, I've been so wrapped up in how to get oxygen is whoosh, that then you kind of lose your train of thought when you need to look at carbon, which again, it's tricky, I would say. So I'm gonna look at that. So we were looking at water, weren't we?
Yeah.
And what was it about the water? Oh yeah, that's it. So one was hydrocarbon, wasn't it?
Yeah.
And then this led on to rivers, and we've got some pits here. Lots of trees around the outside. So yeah, ground level. And you've got some pits that are stagnant and have no life in it whatsoever. Yeah.
Yeah.
Now it's kind of weird to me that let's say seaweed. It's not seaweed, but river reed.
Yeah.
Not reeds. No, that's the wrong thing to say. Mm.
But there is weed in the rivers, isn't there?
There's weed in the rivers, yeah, the
Yeah.
ones in Thetford, right?
Yeah.
Now, compared to any other river that I have ever seen, that is the most abundant in weed.
Yeah.
Have yeah?
Yeah, I've seen that.
Well, what has it got that's separate to anything else? It's got that part where all that water comes gushing out from the mill.
Mm-hmm.
Have you seen that where the,
Yeah.
I took you to it.
Yeah. It's oxygenated, highly
No, it's
oxygenated.
not oxygenated, it is carbonated.
Yeah, or carbonated then. Yeah. Okay.
When it does this and it interacts
Uh-huh.
with this, it's capturing little carbon molecules
Yeah.
in the water. And considering that river has got a lot of concrete
Mm-hmm.
either side of it, yes,
Yeah.
which slows the erosion ratio. So it can't erode. It's a controlled river. Well, most of the rivers are being controlled. So you've got canals, and they don't seem to have that much life
Yeah.
abundant in them.
They'll
Well,
lose the life.
I think that's due to this. If a river was natural to flow, it would carve its course and move.
Mm-hmm.
And in this process, when it goes to, you see, the problem isn't that the river moves as such. But if a river is going to take its course, and its natural course, let's say, is this,
Mm-hmm.
yeah?
Yeah.
Once it's eroded everything, and we stop it and we make it stay like this,
Yeah.
if the river was to change its course naturally,
Mm-hmm.
and it was to go this way,
Yeah.
it would find boulders along the journey.
Yeah.
Whereas here it's eroded all of the boulders. So
Yeah.
there is none.
Yeah.
No more jagged edges because you've put in the concrete in that.
Mm-hmm.
When it hits into a boulder, this causes the water to act with the air or react with the air that causes it to start churning.
Uh-huh.
In that churning, it's capturing carbon and oxygen molecules,
Yeah.
bubbles, if you like.
Uh-huh.
And this is going on to support the life in the river. And that's whether it's river weed,
Mm-hmm.
if we want to call it that. They're the ones that carp it down.
Yeah.
I don't know. It's quite insatiable. It actually just looks like algae, to be honest. But because I used to go get it.
Mm-hmm.
I used to go pull some out
Yeah.
because I wanted it in my fish tank. But I did learn with that I had to make the bubbles minute. Really minute bubbles, like to the
Uh-huh.
point where you can barely see them. Because I had this one oxygenator in there that really didn't work.
Mm-hmm.
And basically it was attached to the filter where you have an air
Yeah.
intake, yeah?
Yeah.
And it faces that way,
Mm-hmm.
the hole does, and it captures this and it sucks the air in and right, that wasn't good enough. I had to get it so that the bubbles were much smaller, so I had to increase the force of the water coming out of there. So I had one of these flow valves, I think it was called flue valve, something like that, where you've got the one that's the external filter. One goes in the tank, sucks the water out, it goes through the filter, and then the other one blows it back out, yes?
Yeah.
But I found that was shockingly rubbish as well.
Mm-hmm.
And I couldn't figure out why this river reed that I was getting kept dying.
Yeah.
I tried changing the lights, I tried changing an awful lot, but no, it was actually down to the bubbles. Come to think about it, it was when I changed the bubble ratio in the water
Yeah.
that I actually got growth come off of it,
Mm-hmm.
to the point where, when you get this stuff, it's like you know, I was being a bit shady about it because I knew that I couldn't get in the water per se. I didn't want to do that.
Yeah.
And swim down. An old way of doing it was to swim down into the water, hold my breath, and go into the water and then go either side of it and pull it up.
Yeah.
Okay, because it really beds down. Oh, man, some of this stuff beds down in multiple places.
Mm-hmm.
So I used a piece of rope, long piece of rope,
Yeah.
attached to a claw hammer.
Yeah.
But I had to be careful because the area that I was in, you know, a couple of people come over to me like, "What are you doing? You know, what are you doing? I see you with a hammer." I was like, oh, I really hope I didn't show anyone that I was, you know, it looked probably really shady. And I was wrapping it round, and this guy was really curious about it. Actually, a couple walking their dog. And I was like, oh, I really don't want any attention off the police. I'm not like out committing any crime with it or anything. I was like, I have got a hammer attached to the end of this, so I don't want to, you know. And he's like, yeah, I see you. He goes, but what are you doing? I was like, I want this weed. He was like, what on earth do you want that for? I was like, because I got like this, I don't know, 7-foot fish tank. And I was like, my fish eat the stuff that I get from a shop before it even has a chance to grow. So, you know, and it just makes the tank look really beautiful. Oh. And he was like, so how are you managing to get it? So I was like, I'll just show you. I'll just wrap it round. This stuff wraps naturally. He's like, oh yeah, you got to be careful in this stuff. And I was pulling on it. And he actually come over and had a go at trying to pull this with me as well. He's like, wow, that is really in there, isn't it? I was like, yeah, it is. And anyway, so I managed to get it, and usually it would go all of a sudden, and you'd fly on your ass.
Yeah.
So you know, I had to sort of slack off when it did that. And then when I got it with a root. That's what I wanted. This type of rooting silty stuff, and I'd pick it out, and then I put it in a bucket, and then take it home. And yeah, I wouldn't take it from the water, let's say, but in Thetford, it has that frothy part that comes from here, and then further down, it has the weir. Last places of my cousin, that is. So it's quite a magical place for me to be. So that's the area I was at. Not that side of it, but further up from there. And at one particular time, I was further down, you know, because it's a very sentimental place. And yeah, so with that, I pulled it out and took it home and put it in the bath for a bit to try and just make sure there were no diseases in it.
Yeah.
And yeah, just basically wash it.
Yeah, wash it.
And get it used to chlorine, which took a little bit of stages. You know, I had to leach out the water that it was in and introduce the chlorine water using TapSafe. Bit by bit, just sort of keep adding the ratio up over a few days. And then, take it from out of that and then put it into the tank.
Yeah.
I didn't get any diseases from it. So in the end, I could just put it straight in.
Yeah,
but the thing is, I got a lot of water boatmen
and
all sorts of other things in there as well. Larvae and stuff. And I also got fish eggs hatched. So fry. Hatched from it. I only assume it was from there because I've never seen fish like that before. Anyway, most of this stuff that was there, the fish automatically knew that was food. Different things were food from it, water boatmen and stuff. So there was really quite life coming into it. After a few weeks, it started to go brown, and I got the ratio correct with the light. I mimicked the cycles of light. It kept dying. Well, it wasn't until I took this filter, and I had one that was an internal filter that attaches this way, so the water comes in this way and pumps out that way. Yeah, and this was the one that had a slight air pipe to it and blew out lots of bubbles. So I disconnected it from the bottom part, and then it had this little hole on here where the water goes in through the motor part and then juices out through here. So I took the end of this and I made it so that it fit to here. The force of this, which was like something like 2,400 litres per hour or something like that, I don't know, 2,400 it was quite a whopper. And this one was about the same ratio as well. And when I combined the force of this to this, it amplified the bubbles that I had, the bubble ratio that I got, and I then took apart inside here as well and widened that. That took some time, and that's how I learnt with the, when making the plastic connectors to here, melting the plastic,
Yeah.
expanding it, and then putting the connections on,
Yeah.
and it looks like it was made custom like that. Yes, like you bought it like it,
Yeah.
the way it all fits together, and how watertight it is.
Yeah.
Well, I put in one of those pumice stones, I think it's called, or also known as an air stone.
Yeah. With big holes in it.
Little holes.
Little
Loads of
holes,
little
but
holes.
yeah, not like big, but
Yeah.
visible.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then I took a air filter pump and connected it onto here. And the thing was, I kept going through the air pump.
Yeah.
I kept going through air pumps, and I kept going through, these motors would burn out after a while, and so would these ones. And this one wouldn't last very long either. But when I combined all of these together, it seemed to have taken the pressure off of this lasted beyond any that I've ever had. This thing lasted beyond anything I had, and this one lasted. What's more, the suction in this one now increased threefold. Like, it was like a Hoover. I dare say if I had those stones in there, it would have sucked them up too. It was that powerful, and it never lost its sort of suction. Then the water went absolutely crystal clear. And with these little bubbles, when I got the river weed again, it didn't die. It lasted so long that it began to metastasize. I had to start cutting it back. It overgrew so much that the fish had very limited space to go. I don't think they really minded it because they like to sort of bed in it, and then the fish were always constantly fat to the point that their poo was no longer that brown, dirty color. They were literally pooing green. Like because they'd eaten so much of it. And when I dropped food in, they weren't interested in it. It's almost like when you got a cat, offering it wet food, give it some biscuits, it didn't like it, right? So this is what happened, and as a result of that, I got a much more fresher tank. Then there was a lot more breeding happening, but I didn't think about this until further back. I didn't know that that was the reason that fixed it. I just assumed that it was, this bit was just a bit more hardy than the rest. But thinking about it, back with this, when talking about that video the other day, I actually think it's got something to do with the bubbles. So perhaps the weed is not, it oxygenates the tank, but I think it needs carbon in the water. But there's a balance ratio. Fish can't live in carbonated water. But they can live in water that's mainly predominantly oxygen based, that has got carbon bubbles in it. Not enough to turn it carbonated, but enough for it to be captured from the air, that's then pumped into the water. These bubbles were so small that they didn't want to just rush straight the way up. They seem to have clung to everything all the way across the bottom. So when I cleaned the tank out and fresh water over it, the bubbles seem to coat everything, even the fish. The bubbles seem to stick to the outer side of the fish, which I've never seen that before. And I once had this trouble with, I brought a load of fish from a shop, and I introduced them the way you're meant to introduce them. They didn't show any signs of stress. They didn't have any, what would appeared to be any disease or anything. But then when I introduced them to the tank, all my fish got it. So I cleaned the water out because, it's pointless keeping the water. And when these bubbles stuck to it, out of every single chemical I tried from the shop, didn't seem to work. But I think it was the bubbles that stuck to the fish that got rid of the, what do you call it, that disease. I can't remember what it was now. Whatever. And I tried every chemical because I had to play around with the lighting. I couldn't have certain UV light on or this, that, and the other. So my water stayed purer for longer. The fish's composition of their shits changed to the point where this added into the beneficial, the factor of keeping the tank healthy. It's usually due to those flakes that I put in that was absolutely terrible. And sometimes I take the fish out and give them a different type of food, one that's not commonly known to fish. But they loved it to the point where I couldn't put that food into the water because I didn't want to dirty up the tank. So I had to take them out of the tank to feed, and they loved it, man. To the point where this is where it got to the point where I used to have to chase them around with a net to try and get them out of the tank when
Yeah,
cleaning.
yeah.
To the point where when they knew that they were going to eat this other stuff, they swam into the net voluntarily. Like they all come to the net and it's
Yeah,
like I was
dinner
getting
time,
scoops.
Mini.
Yeah, yeah.
Mm,
And I put them in the net and
mm,
especially koi. Koi loved
mm,
it. And yeah, so again they were in this tank for a bit until
mhm.
they, excreted out, blah blah blah. And then I put them back into this tank. Anyway, this was just when I was getting introduced with this, and they got very big and very healthy, and they were very hardy to disease. So the ones I'd buy would commonly then get disease. Um, yeah, I don't know if it just come out of them, whether they got it from the shop.
Yeah,
Usually,
yeah.
it's associated with the shop. The rest wouldn't get it. After time, it was a different type of food. Yet it seemed to me that the flakes were feeding this,
Yeah.
whatever it was. It wasn't just feeding the fish; it was feeding the
Mm,
bacteria in there as well. So this with the air bubbles that were coming out is what allowed that river weed to survive, and I had to start cutting it because it was just overgrowing on everything. And then when I went and got some more of the pretty plants, if you like, you know, there was something like you could get 10 for 40 quid of the more exotic-y type
yeah.
fish tank plants, the more ones that look much nicer.
Mm-hmm.
But fish don't know their decoration. That's food to them, and
Yeah,
they
they
would
will
eat it
eat it. Yeah.
to the point where it started to. Some of this stuff started just. I'd never seen it look like that before. Like it started producing different things in it, and I was like, wow. It survived that much more longer because they were preferring
Uh-huh. Yeah.
eating this stuff.
Yeah.
But I think that came from the bubble ratio, and as I think about it now, from the river I got it from, the difference was that it has a lot of bubbles.
Mm-hmm.
And it also had from it's called a water mill. It
Yeah.
used to be a mill
Yeah.
that was they used the force of the water for the mill.
Yeah. Yeah.
Back in old times, I can remember when all of those buildings that were over the back there weren't there. There was
Mm-hmm.
just this one building over the river, and as a kid, I went into that. It was easy to get into, very
Yeah.
dangerous,
Yeah.
by the way, very
Uh-huh.
dangerous. It's no longer there, and yeah, I was in that with all that noise. It was really falling apart, so dilapidated.
Mm.
Yeah, so I was very young when I did that, so that was potentially very dangerous because it was fascinating though. The greatest memories of childhood is that one. So with all of this mixing of the water,
Mm-hmm.
then helps me understand now by doing all of these weird little things as you go. You then begin to learn. Life is teaching you in a way
Yeah.
that the reason why there's that much river reed in that part of Thetford is due to all of these bubbles
Mm.
because it's capturing the carbon.
Yeah.
This is then sticking to the plant. The plant is then oxidizing that, and I wonder if the fish that are there are quite big and healthy. Whereas if I'm comparing this to the times when I was jumping off the bridge
Yeah.
into the water,
Mm-hmm.
there wasn't any river reed or weed in any of this river. It was literally none anywhere.
Mm-hmm.
And these fish were obviously a lot smaller. I mean, I think the biggest one, like I said, was probably about this big. And compared to the pit that was nearby, the one that did have a lot of this, the differences with that pit compared to all the other pits is there is slow bubbles releasing from underneath
Yeah.
the pit. So
Yeah.
it's almost like that underneath the pit that there's some sort of air freeing
Mm-hmm.
that is bubbling up through the water, yes?
Yeah.
So that would be draining to something else. Perhaps pits are usually connected underground. So there's some sort of reaction going off. And you said it, you coined it, where you said that there would be the breakdown of leaf matter.
Yeah.
which would then release carbon dioxide.
Mm-hmm.
Yes?
Yeah.
When we was looking up about recycling.
Yeah.
Yeah? And when you have a compost heap,
Yeah.
you are leaking carbon.
Yeah.
So that carbon, but if you have, the problem is with the world, I think, is that when we get to a ratio of too much carbon, the carbon starts to make methane. If a compost heap is not exposed to oxygen,
Yeah.
the carbon builds up, and then it starts producing, is it methane gas?
Yeah, because there's no more oxygen, so it goes to methane, which is
So if you
CH4.
if you think about it, if we keep burning fossil fuel in that aspect, and there isn't enough oxygen, we'll then start to make methane. Is that correct? With the limited amount of oxygen that there is, we'd begin to start making, that would start producing a chemical reaction of methane gas. And methane catastrophes have happened in the past on Earth, which wiped life out.
Yeah.
I think.
Yeah.
Yeah, this overindulging on the greenery, let's say. So again, this leads on. Like there's a thread here, and when I pull it, it's beginning to fray open into something here. So again, this is highly beneficial for the next steps on from here. So rivers need very fine bubbles blown into it if they've been cemented. So isn't there some places in France? Where are these places where you can? Is it France where they've got the on the tin where they've got the boat and the person's pushing over with the stick? What's that? There were some dolphins seen there.
That is Venezia. That's in Italy.
That's in Italy. Okay, sorry, Italy.
Yeah,
then.
near the sea.
I could have sworn there was something
next
in
to the
France as
sea.
well.
Probably is. I don't know that.
Perhaps not the same, but anyway, is all the water quite turning stagnant and algae producing?
Doesn't Netherlands have canals as well?
Yeah, because there are some places there that are turning very putrid, aren't they?
Yeah, they use boats a lot, and people go there even on holidays, renting boat and going over canal. So there must be a lot. Yeah.
So there would also be a place here in Britain where we got the locks.
Yeah.
Where we lock in the I can't remember what it's called now, canal.
Yeah.
And the water fills up, and then they open it to move the boat because the river isn't big enough. And then you've got the Tiffy. There isn't that much in the way of that river seems to be turning quite polluted. The Tiffy and Windham, but that was responsible for building the Abbey. Can you believe that at one time? So they must have dammed it at some place, which a dam causes overflow. And then if you've got the Hoover Dam, oh, I reckon where the water's being backlogged like that, there's stagnant, smelly, probably not a lot of fish. But the other side of it, you see this life. It's probably because the water is being forced through the turbine. The turbine's whipping it up, therefore mixing the water with more bubbles.
With air,
lots of tiny little bubbles, which then go on to feed the weed that's there, which is helping environment crisis because it oxidizes that. And what's more, it also makes for good fish. So if we look at the Tiffy, and you see that kingfisher, it's traveling quite far, but it's missing an area. It seems to not want to go to this area. It seems to want to be somewhere over there and somewhere up there. Well, back in the day, the Tiffy and Windham used to have a weir in this certain area. It's gone now, but they've put those blocks there where the water sort of goes into one to the other to the other. Well, it's not the best in the world, but if you lined either side of your riverbank with a solar panel that was fixated to the banks, let's say, in these areas, in any area like this, with solar panels, and this energy was put into a device that could put lots of bubbles, takes the air from the surface. This would do really well if you had rivers that were next to roads. Because then I suppose it could also pollute it, but at the same time, I think it would be very beneficial to the Flora. So what's happening at the coral reef then? Are the waves less there? If so, even waves are adding to this. If the waves stop,
Mm. Yeah.
you see they're hitting sea defenses, aren't they?
Yeah.
Well, that could be a problem. The sea defenses need to be not smooth, they need to be jagged in order for the wave to hit it and interact with the air I think it will foam it up. It's different when it's the sea, I think, but when you start to lose, you see, so there's a ratio breakdown. Modern humans have blocked rivers, control the flow of we can just controlling everything right now, and I think this is causing such a damage. And there's also some places in Florida where the water becomes very nasty,
Yeah.
and it over blooms with algae,
Yeah.
and it's becoming quite the smell. But I think it needs oxygen and fast flowing water.
Yeah.
Perhaps it's because the way those have been built in Florida has prevented the flow ratio.
Mm.
And it's not about the flow, but the water that's coming in has lots of these little tiny particles, where it used to probably have lots of these little particles that could really mix around these areas, which then stop the smell. But now, with it being blocked off, it's interfered with the flow, so it's basically made the water stay still, which is like a pit.
Yeah.
Whereas this particular pit that had loads of that weed in it, and then there was one that was beside it that was quite a way up. It didn't have anything in it, no weed whatsoever. But there again, there wasn't any of these minute bubbles in it. Now, I've played around in a lot of pits. You saw the boat made
Yeah.
out of, one was a bathtub and a few barrels, and the other one was that caravan lid.
Yeah.
Yeah, it looks
Yeah.
unusual to a
Yeah.
caravan
Yeah.
lid. It's not exactly a caravan. I'd say camper van lid
Yeah.
made out of fiberglass.
Yeah.
Still there. Can't believe it's still there. Well, I can believe it's still there, but damn me, man. That was my boat. I had a remote control airplane on that fucking thing. And again, whipping up the water. Even a propeller that was half in, half out would be enough to just start bubbling that. You don't want major, but the more bubbles you have, the more reed you have. And then if you've got more bubbles, you've then got more river reed that's then oxygenizing the carbon, which is then feeding fish, which is then also very good for releasing it into the environment. So you have a healthy river, and then it causes the fish to populate again, because the rivers here we're losing fish thick and fast. And that's why I think is because we've stopped the flow. And then when the river wants to start maneuvering this way, we counteract it. Well, naturally, when a river goes to course its channel, and then understand that. Do you ever think everything happens for a reason? That rivers need freedom.
Yeah, they do.
Everything needs freedom.
Yeah.
Everything is just pointing back to freedom once again.
Yeah.
So then you've got this moving, and as it moves, a boulder might be coming in the way. And when the river gets faster, it's going to hit into that,
Yeah.
and it's going to froth the water again, mixing the air and the water together. Because the water is H2O, isn't it? Well, if plants rely on CO2 and fish rely on plants that rely on CO2, you can see how this begins to, you knock down a balance just by doing something as controlling the flow.
Yeah, and you separate the vegetation from the embankments to reach to the river because there's concrete. So it cannot do that as well. Then animals like frogs and other animals that would maybe go in and out, and it's the whole cycle.
So waterfalls, past the point of a waterfall, if this is churning up enough of the air mixing into the water, then they should be the most lushest in fish, and also the biome of what is supported there should be the most purest. Is it? This has got to be where it's so waterfall, somewhere where there's a waterfall. And then you know that they lost a lot of river salmon here.
Yeah.
There's a lot of river salmon that's gone, and they're trying to reintroduce it, but I don't think it would work successfully. I think it will start to, but they won't grow very big. I think they'll just be very small and very cling to life until you can put the bubbles back into the water. This will then look after the fish. So you need to look after the nature in order to look after the fish. Then the salmon would start to come back. So that river must have slowed down or something is missing. Perhaps it was going over a boulder and it managed to erode the boulder and it's no longer there, and then this collapses that. So if a river doesn't flow fast, then it's not great. So in rivers that are fast flowing further down, they must be more luscious. So there will be places in the river where it's got lush vegetation in the water, and it must be slightly further back from the rapids because it's mixing the water. Therefore, they're more healthier river, and that's why Thetford River is healthy at that part. But anything back further from that, it's not all that. You notice that there's less reverie as you go further back. Well, the river is very slow. It's not knocking into anything. It's not causing any resistance. It's not generating the friction that's needed to mix the water and the air together, which then traps these bubbles. So I know that Thetford, they started taking some pictures. So Mum was saying that the river turned all frothy. Yeah, that's someone with a load of fucking washing up liquid. I bet you someone further upstream put a load of washing up liquid in the water, and as it went through all of these things,
it bubbled
up. That gives you that knowing that piece of information back then has left me to think even more that's that churning that it's able to cause froth. Well, it's in washing up liquid in a bath. If you put bubbles in a bath, so if you put bubble bath in a bath that's already full, do you get bubbles?
No.
So what do you need? You need current.
Yeah.
And when you got the current and the tap turns on, especially, do you know you get more bubbles if you use a cold tap than what you do if you use a hot tap? Because the hot tap is limited to amount of full ratio.
Oh, I see.
There's more pressure in the cold tap. So versus.
I don't know that because I come from different systems.
Yeah, you probably got pressurized hot water.
Why,
Some
I
places
understand.
do, some places don't.
I understand.
If you've got gas, then you've probably got pressurized hot water.
Or
there
central.
Again, it's still limited.
No central one.
The slower the water, the cold water runs over the element, the more hotter it can become. I think that's how. The gas central heating works. I think it needs to be slightly slower.
But if you have in city central heating, it comes from far away from the incinerator where they burn stuff, and they use they heat the water for big houses in the city, so it runs like miles.
Yeah, so if you ever
and that is pressurized.
I think it's got its goodness to that, but if you ever get a burst pipe, do you lose hot water?
Yeah, you lose hot or cold water.
Yeah, there you are. So then you get there's an issue with that. But if you've, I guess there's always good and bad for both. But there again,
it is.
Because then you got a water tank, you still got that hot water.
Yeah.
So even if the pipes burst, you still got a tank of hot water.
Yeah.
Okay, that might not be the best in the world, but you could moderate that, and you still got your hot water, and it gives you a few days.
Yeah.
So I think that this could help the environment so much more is if we lined the rivers with solar panels. Again, water and electricity doesn't mix. Okay, yeah, to a degree it doesn't, but in this case I think it should. And have some sort of motor or some sort of oxygenator, which it's not an oxygenator, even though we call this oxygen pump, which is technically not. It's taking whatever's in the environment.
Yeah. Air.
Yeah. So because it's taking all sorts, isn't it? Really, carbon monoxide, and carbon dioxide, and oxygen. So, but there's readily available more oxygen in the water. But to say that the plants are able to tap into that, they're not. The fish might be able to. That's why the fish stay living slightly a little bit longer after the plants have gone, and then they start eating whatever around or whatever falls in. So they become more. Again, nothing's ever a true herbivore or meat eater. But usually fish are probably more optional. They would be more herbivore because they'll eat the greenery where it's there. But when it's not there, they then switch over and then start eating like the water boatman. And then the diversity of all of that goes because the fish are overfeeding on it. So it's then knocking out that. You see how it all just runs on to an effect, doesn't it? And they're eating that all year round. If it's there, so they are overeating that.
Yeah, if the water is stagnant, there is no weed in it. If there is no weed in it, then the fish doesn't have nice source to eat. It doesn't have place to hide if there are humans
Yeah.
or whatever.
And we see what happens when
Yeah.
we eat nothing but meat. We could say, oh, we're starting to become unhealthy.
Yeah.
And then we need a bit of greenery in our
Mhm,
diet
mhm.
and some meat. Well, if we think about it, that's how the natural world works, because in the summer there would be an abundance in river weed. The fish will feast and gorge upon this.
Yeah.
They get there like 5 a day, if you like, but theirs is over a season.
Yeah.
And then in the winter, some people say, oh, they're not as active in the winter. That's not 100% true,
Mm.
because they still do. They're
Yeah.
still picking.
Mm.
Because I've caught them in the winter and I've caught them in the summer. So
Yeah.
temperature is something there. Yeah, there is. You're more likely to get them in the summer, but again,
Yeah, they are slightly less active
yeah,
because it's cold water and
they're just slower.
maybe conserve energy
Yeah.
more. Yeah. But they still, when they are there, they will still clean the bottom of
Yeah.
the river as well
Yeah.
from any plant
Yeah,
material.
but the problem comes is when they've got no greenery to eat and they're
Yeah.
constantly eating this. Again, worms make their way under rivers as well. I mean, all sorts, anything that falls in,
Yeah.
and they're eating all of this rotten stuff as
Yeah.
opposed to fresh.
Yeah.
And then their diseases start to
Yeah.
increase, and then they die from these diseases.
Yeah, exactly. It's a circle,
Yeah,
isn't it?
so we then lose the aqua,
Yeah. Yeah.
and then we lose all of that. And that's why I think why Thetford River at that area from point A to point B is so much more rich with fish, is rich with river reed. Like I've never seen any be that full of it. But yet where I've noticed where there are slower currents, the Abbey River there near the Tiffy reminds me of the same one that's over near Eccles. And it's not very, for the area, for the sunlight that it gets, for the type of water quality that it's got, I mean, it's very poor.
Around that bridge, isn't it? There?
Yes.
Yeah. In front of it, even completely stagnant because they hold back the plant material from the trees, not from the river, but from the trees, and all the rubbish sits there.
Oh, that one in the Tiffy.
Yeah,
the one in Wyndham. Yeah. All that rubbish and pollution there. Yeah, that's quite a lot.
And after it's a bit cleaner because it holds that rubbish.
But to make that part of the river there more diverse and more live and kicking, it would need something a bit more upstream.
Yeah.
It need
steps are good as well if there are in a river, so the water
it needs.
gets
I don't know about
bubbly,
steps.
bubbly.
I'm not sure that's enough. I think it needs to be from a great height and full,
Yeah.
so that it really. It really starts getting there. And then what we see in Thetford River that is unique is a lot of swans, a lot of ducks. Again, it's bird activity, and then you've got the geese that come, and they will then begin to oversource from that area. So you've got swans, you've got ducks.
Yeah.
Then we feed these. If we didn't feed them, they would overfish. Therefore, knocking this on because that area is the only area where you've got that sort of diversity there. Then you've got the geese that come from the Egyptian geese, and then what other type of geese are there? There are the Polish geese, I think they were called, something like that. I don't know. There was 2 different species of geese. Actually, I think there were 3. Come to think about it, I think there were 3. So the Egyptian geese, and the reason why they're picking this area is because it's so rich in the type of, it supports them in a lot of ways. So if we weren't feeding them, they would definitely they'd overfish the area. So look at that. That I think that comes from the watermill again. So a man-made object is actually doing far more. So whatever this is, if you imagine installing these in across the rivers, in order just to create that vast amount of water there so that it froths it up, it's going to be capturing more carbon from the air. And then if this happens over a lot of rivers that then reach the sea, does it then up the marine life inside the, take care of the rivers, and you get better oceans as a natural result of that. And then if we've been controlling the rivers like this, have we dirtied up our own coastlines because of this factor? You wouldn't think it though, would you? You wouldn't think that such a small support system could be going on in the old days would have supported the sea. And then we had more fish in the sea.
Mm-hmm.
And you can say, oh, it's overfishing. I don't know. I'm unsure. I don't think so. Because at the estuary, you know that you're mixing fresh water with salt water.
Yeah.
So, and again, fresh water is sea sweat. So sea sweat, it evaporates, rains on the land, and then it mixes with all of this nutrients that goes into the sea. Then all of the stuff in the sea would be relying on this mixing, but the mixing is no longer there because it's like when you go down to a bottom of a river now, one that's naturally moving is got a different soil composition at the bottom of it,
Yeah.
but one that's been held in place. You've got this strange putrid
Yeah, because
sediment at the bottom because it's been in the same position for over
it's
what,
dead river, nothing is
100
eating
years.
it. Yeah. Yeah.
Add this into no life,
Yeah.
add this into no weed, and perhaps the weed has also been supporting the
Of course
oceans.
it is. It is a plant. Yeah.
So what goes on near the coral? What rivers have they been stuck? Have they been fixed into one place over where the coral, the Great Barrier Reef, is it what it's called? Whereabouts is that? And then have the rivers been utilized the same way? And then is this causing the knock-on effect to the barrier reef? Is there a link here? Have there been put in sea defenses? Because again, if the waves are crashing into a certain type of cliff, although it's destructive, yes, in certain soft material, but if it's hitting at rocks of all different sizes and shapes, it's going to be interacting with the air, which is going to be mixing in this sort of carbon, and carbon might be extracted easier via the plants, which then produce the oxygen, and then all of the fish life relies on what those plants then oxygenate from the carbon. So perhaps fish can't take, which is true, because fish can't take oxygen from the water by the H2O. For some reason, they're not capable of making electrolysis. They're not built in electrolysis machines. They rely on bubbles. And the gills would indicate this. That's why they don't survive, even though the water is oxygenated by nature, because it's H2O. But yet it's H2O plus it's bubbled with oxygen bubbles and carbon bubbles. So therefore, if I come to think about it, yeah, I think that this small change would have a massive impact. It's basically the small spanner into the big machine. I think. And I think that we've caused a small spanner that has knocked on this, and trying to focus over here at this is what's going on, or you don't understand it. Well, of course you don't understand it if we don't understand where we're throwing the wrench. And if we're throwing the wrench here, and then it would be a funny thing to really follow a river that is continuously oxygenated all the way through, which is not oxygenated, it's carbonated in a way, but not carbonated as a drink carbonated. So semi-carbonated, semi-oxygenated. Does this have an impact near the estuary? Then does this harbour more marine life at the estuary? And then is there because there's a mix of freshwater, saltwater, does the life pick up there? If it does pick up there, does it then contribute into the ocean? Because, you've got a lot of seas falling into the ocean, a lot of rivers falling into the sea. And if they're all starting to get knocked out because of humans have changed the way the river flows, it's stagnated water, less of the bubbles hitting in because we want it to go slower, because of this, because that. Is that what's causing this knock-on effect? And then are we then in jeopardy of losing marine life as a result of it? Because it seems to me like all things are all about very delicate cycles, and when you knock one of the cycles out of sync, all of them go out of sync. So we've now got diseasey fish. Well, that would be obvious because they've eaten nothing but things that they shouldn't be eating, but it's because the survival's kicked in. They can't get to the nutrition that they would have got, which would be river reed and different stuff like that. Not enough energy to travel up or downstream. They don't do that. I don't even think they were aware there's more, or it gets less shallow and more deeper, so that might stop them from traveling here there. The only ones that are capable of traveling is eel and salmon, I think. And again, that's salmon have evolved to do this, and eel is another one. Eels travel upriver, I think they do, and I think they go down. Yeah, because when they do it scares the hell out of you. Especially if you're in the water and then all these eels come. Oh my days, that's a thing out of nightmares, that is. But again, was blessed to be in a river at the time that started happening, and also another time when there was like over 1,000 deer of all shapes, sizes, muntjacs to stags, just migrating. All of them, like all together, all at the same time. They just, I think it was around 2012 that happened.
Hmm.
And yeah, one particular very foggy morning, driving, having a morning drive, clear my head, and there was a few of us, and that particular morning there was just I had to stop the car because there was just a herd, and that's the only way I can explain it, of deer, thousands, one after the other, and I could have got close to this stampede of them, and I could have held my hand out and I'd have brushed every single one of them. They were not bothered by my presence. Something else had triggered whatever it was that they were doing. Man, that was something. That was one of the most memorable things I've ever seen. But anyway, so again, off topic a little bit, but yeah, I wonder if it's got something to do with that. I would, if I had to place my money on it, which I don't, but my mindset on it, I think, is probably more better. And thinking back, this sort of fits in to some things that I've done with this stuff.
Yeah.
And the only way you could really know this, if this is actually working, is a pit, oxygenate a pit, or carbonate a pit, not with carbon dioxide, no, just with the natural air that's around, whatever that may be consisting of. And then, if this improves, does it improve the ratio of oxygen in our atmosphere? Because imagine if we did this all over the world, right, and it started to take off, like, whoa, this is really working. Would it affect the amount of carbon in the winter? Because it's adding another one to it.
Yeah.
And if it doesn't do that, then is it going to add more marine life and more river life, aquarium life, let's say, aqua life? And then is this going to bring back the diversity of water boatmen, larvae, can't remember what the others are called, but, on the old days of dike dipping. That sounds so funny. And, yeah, so I wonder if it's got something to do with that. And then why are some pits got this and some pits haven't? I don't know. I've noticed some sort of bubbles underneath there. That pit has always got bubbles coming from somewhere underneath. It's bubbling constantly.
Methane, if it's dead.
It's not dead, no, it's alive.
If
Yeah,
it's alive,
it's got
then
lots of
it's
reed.
not.
It's got lots of carpet weed in it. It's got lots to the point where it impedes fishing. People have to throw in. I don't know. It belongs to a farmer, I believe. It's on his land anyway. Although they hate it because it's less land to grow on. But some people had these, I don't know, this metal stuff attached to a rope. That's why I used a claw hammer to get the reed out, because I remember back in the day, I was seeing someone at the pit and they were throwing this thing in and they were dragging it and they were pulling out all of the weeds that were there in order so that they could fish better. It was really dangerous, damaging that, but it grew back just as quick as that anyway. So after a couple of weeks, it was all there again. But man, that stuff stank when it was left to rot to one side. But
so there must be some good bacteria that's working.
yeah,
and maybe
possibly,
creating carbon dioxide or something.
Yeah. It's bubbling into the water, and then there's enough ratio for the weed to convert that at such a. I mean, it's packed full of it. This stuff is packed full of it, and the water is extremely warm. So yeah, there must be some sort of biodegradable.
But healthy for life.
Yeah, that's definitely something there. So, yeah, if I had to guess it, I'd say it's got something to do with the bubbles, the bubbles, because a good experiment, which was the question that I was asking, is what happens if you grow weed in hydrocarbon? River weed, whatever it's called, carpet weed. If you grew it in hydrocarbons, could it extract the hydrocarbons, the carbon from the hydrocarbon? And if the answer is no, then it's like saying then that would then tell me enough information to say then fish can't extract oxygen from H2O then, which is water. They wouldn't be able to do it. They're relying on what is in the water, and water seems to be very readily. And like I said, when the smaller these bubbles were, they weren't floating. Some of these were sticky.
Yeah.
Much more stickier. The more smaller the bubble, the stickier it was. Like I said, it
Mhm.
stuck to the fish,
Yeah.
stuck to the glass, it stuck to the bottom, mainly at the bottom of the tank, and it also stuck to all of the weed.
Mhm.
So there's something there. And I had a big piece of uh, driftwood in it. A massive. You remember it? When it was, it took
Yeah.
ages for me to get that
Yeah. I
freaking thing to
remember.
sink.
Yeah, I remember.
So, and that was after like months of releasing the tannin from it.
Mm.
Like I had to, I figured out a quick way to drop the tannin from it because if not, I read somewhere that it would take years, like years and years of that being so. I
Mm.
was like, I ain't got years. I've got one season to get this going. You know, I'm too OCD. It must be done now. It must be done now. And it's not because I'm impatient. It's just because I see it and I want to see it in reality. I don't want to see it in my mind. I want to see it in reality and
Mm.
combine the two. So I had to figure out a way, which I don't know if it's really worth me saying, a bit of a weird way to achieve that, but I managed to release the tannin really quickly
Mhm.
to the point where I was no longer leeching tannin anymore. Because
Yeah.
if not, it tastes very bad.
Mhm.
And again, I didn't want the fish to have to put up with that. So I would have liked to live in a water where there was all that tannin from the bark
Mhm.
trunk. Actually, it was a root.
Mhm.
It was a part of a root, put it that way. So yeah, we were seeing it upside down. So if you'd have turned that piece of wood that I had with all those bits coming out, that's the bottom part of a tree stump. So the root area, if you like, where
Yeah.
it then went
Yeah.
into the trunk,
Mhm.
and that was a portion of that. So and it wouldn't sink it because it was so freaking dry,
Mm.
but it had never been leached before. So and it took me ages to get that home. Do you know how heavy that fucking thing was? I had to tie it to a piece of rope and then tie the rope around my. I must have looked like a right weirdo. I don't mind. It was. I was. Yeah. So I tied it to myself and then walked. That thing built my legs up. It was so heavy. Oh man, that was something. It was like, won't that break in your tank? Well, no, because it wants to float. So technically, it's not really putting much weight on the on the glass, so no.
Mm.
Oh, so you can do? Yeah, you can do it. Don't worry about that. Your weight in there, if it's 100, it's going to be like 100. It's going to be like 30
Mm.
pounds, I
Mm.
guess, out of the 100. In it, yeah, because it wants to float. So it's going to be a lot less than that because it wants to sit on the surface. But yeah, so yeah, did think that is it going to break the glass? Nah, it shouldn't do. Oh no, it's too floaty. Yeah, because the old tank I had where I had the lid over the top, it used to push the lid.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I really was like, this is not good. But yeah, but yeah, after a few days, it sort of settled itself down. It just had to really absorb the
Suck. Yeah.
water. That's if I was before dropping the tannins, I then dried it out
Mhm.
because I needed
Yeah.
to make the chemical go inert
Mhm.
because I did use a chemical to get that
Yeah.
drop those. Yeah, weird chemical, but still, it's safe enough because I could turn off that chemical as well
Mhm.
using some other solutions, which I did know about. So I was
Mhm.
like, this is cool and this is safe. Okay,
Mm.
right, yeah, goody good.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I think it's got something to do with that. I think it's lack of bubbles. There's a lack of movement in water. The rivers have slowed down,
Mm.
perhaps, and their erosion patterns have stopped. So, therefore, having a big boulder causing all of that resistance where the water likes to flow over the top is probably doing much more beneficial to the river itself further downstream. Yeah. So I think it's that. So I think
Mm.
it's got something to do with that. So keep it frothing, like yeah, lots of bubbles putting into it, and then you're removing more carbon out of the atmosphere.
Mm.
What do you reckon?
Yeah.
What do you reckon? It's got to be something like that because this eroding, this churning, this mixing, this whacking it, and then the bubbles seem to. And then with there being a faster current or slightly more faster current, the bubbles are not going to be focused on going up
Yeah.
because the water's going to be like, nah, I win.
Mm.
We're going downstream, and every time it tries to go up, nope, it's a bit like a dolphin with a bubble. You know
Mm.
how they can keep it down by using the force of the water.
Mhm.
That's what they're doing when they swim by it. It looks playful, but I think they're using that. They understand that the force, their movement is creating a force in the
Yeah.
water, which is causing the bubble to stay down. And then there's the other one where they play chase the bubble or keep the bubble down for as long as possible.
Mm-hmm.
I think they're teaching us something. I think they're trying to tell us something. Do you think? Hey, humans, look at this.
Mm-hmm.
You see how this stays down? Get it going in the rivers. Come on, look. We rely on this. Don't make us come back out of the water again because we'll kick your ass. Right? You know what I mean? Yeah. So, you seen our brains? Yeah. So again, intelligent, but yeah, I think there's something there. Stagnant pond as opposed to yeah. And again, this made quite a current in the water. It was a really fast current, which some people said, do they like that? Yes, they do. They love it. They love a fast current. Could you remember when they used to get really close to the front of this? Get close to where the water was coming. And Koi used to do something really strange. He used to put his mouth over it.
Yeah.
Yeah, and the force of it would go through the gills. He'd like try and bite on the top of it every now and then, and then let go and go flying in the current, and then swim back to it, and then go flying in the current. And the rest of the fish were kind of copying this, so they like to have fun with the speed of the current.
Yeah.
Yeah, to the point where the current was so fast that anything that was at the bottom kind of went down and then pushed upwards and then whipped back round. So the bubbles took a very long time to break the surface.
Mm-hmm.
So I often wondered if I could, back then, if I could have kept an eye on one bubble, which I did ask myself, I wonder how long this bubble has been circulating. Has it been in there weeks? Has it been in there months?
Mm.
You know, that one particular bubble. Because it was very difficult for it to break the surface. It did eventually. Some of them do eventually, I'm sure. I have no doubt about it. And they're replenished with more. But some did go towards the top. Yeah, no problem. The more bigger ones, quicker to the surface. That's very interesting. So I wonder if I could have dyed a particular bubble or had some sort of equipment that could pick one bubble and follow it. How long had it been there? Has it been in the water for hours, just circulating, and then found its way up? Because there were parts where there were current and weren't current. But anything that was caught in that current area, it stayed in it. So, and the fish would sometimes be in that, and sometimes they would be out of that current. And they'd sort of rest a little bit in that sort of area. And more towards the evening, they'd navigate to the area where there was less current. So, I'd say they enjoyed it more. But koi, what a weird fish. She, even though I thought it was a he until it laid a load of eggs. And then they become more broody. Is that the word? Can I use that? Horny?
Yeah.
Yeah, because they were, you know, I never had so many fish. It was unbelievable. There was just, and then everyone used to make the joke because, you know, the cats with the, they'd either say, oh, how's your zoo going? Or they would say, everything around you seems to get pregnant. Like the animals and then the fish. Because, yeah, I don't know. Just a lot of people were there to experience that. All the animals just started going on this breeding spree. Oh, my days. That was a lot. Yeah, so they become a joke about it. You know, that there was it was like when one had finished, another one would then start slapping eggs. Well, I don't know. They start doing this really strange, brutal stuff first. Where some of the other fish was kept pulling on the fin of the others, just kept biting on the fins. Not doing any damage, but it looked quite. It was rough. It looked kind of, you know, if that's foreplay, man, that's brutal, right? So and then the fish would start doing these dances with each other. It was very strange. And they were absolute players, I tell you, because once they finished with this one, and then this one would start putting in a load of eggs, and then they'd all rush in. And some of them would eat it. They'd like, I think that was out of jealousy. I mean, weird, fish get jealous, but and then they would move on to another fish, and then they taught me. I know you're male, and then now you're okay, you're female, okay, right? And now I know you're female. I've got to really change the names on some of you, if you would even think about naming fish. So, but yeah, very strange, right? You give them all guy names and girl names. And then you got to go back and revisit because that was totally wrong. So, you know, the ones that you thought was a guy. This one's Greg. okay, this one's gonna have to be Rachel now or something like that. I don't know. I was just thinking out of the box. One was called Angel because it had an angel. It looked like it had an angel reading a prayer book on its pattern
Mm-hmm.
on the side.
Yeah.
So that one was called Angel. That was a male, and he was the brutal one. So he must have been the god of horniness then, if you want to give it that. So because he was a little fucker. He told me who were female in the tank,
Mm-hmm.
which I thought was a she because I don't know, it just looked like a she. But then how do you tell what a female and male fish is? It's kind of weird, isn't it? But still, this way. Yeah, it got really. And then when one had fry, there was then some other fry, then some other fry, then more eggs, then eggs, then eggs, then eggs, and then, oh my days, I was sick and tired of having to keep cleaning the water out of how cloudy it got. Really murky. So again, this improves their breeding ratio again with the weed that was in there. The more
Mm-hmm.
weed you've got, the better food you've got. Um, I was giving them fish flakes for many years before this, and not so much as one. They were just so unmotivated,
Mm-hmm.
and they most certainly weren't thinking about being little horny devils, whatever you want to call them, fish. No, they were more, mm, you know, boring. Kind of like life was boring for them.
Mm-hmm.
So, and then this, it really begun to. So yeah, there, it already in your own tank. You're seeing something. So that was all. I'm relating this to the airs, the small bubbles and the fast current, and the weed that wouldn't take. So again, it's all such a journey, isn't it?
Yeah.
Such a journey. So, and then this is probably leading to this now. There we go. There we are. It's all starting to fit in. So yeah, if this worked here, then why shouldn't it for the rivers? And then hardy to disease as well. So there you are. There's something else. And what are we seeing a lot of? Diseasey fish. Lots of diseased fish. That's
Yeah.
in
Yeah.
rivers and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Ah, yeah. There we go. There we are. And then is this contributing to the ocean? Could you imagine that all of this, if this happens and then they're like, yeah, we're going to go out and we're going to try this out. Oh my God, it's actually working. And then the seas begin to fix. What a story to tell backwards on that.
Yeah.
It started from one guy with a fish tank,
Mm-hmm.
Can you, yeah, did you see?
Yeah.
Yeah, like
Yeah.
what a puzzle piece.
If you have a healthy estuary, of course, it must help in the ocean in around the area.
Yeah, I had so many freaking fish that it was unbelievable. And even Koi used to eat some of the fry. Well, I used to make the joke of, do you want some chips to go with that? I don't think he meant to, but he'd
Yeah.
go up to the surface for something, just
Yeah.
and then something swim by. Would you like me to cut you some fucking potato if you want? I'll make you some chips. How's that? You hungry? Do you feel better? Cannibalistic? It was me thinking you only ate fucking veg.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But yeah, no. So yeah, that was kind of a bit morbid, but still, you got to see the funny side in it. But sort of. Yeah, there you are. So I'm gonna leave that one there because I think I said enough. I said too much, maybe. Yeah, I'm gonna leave it there.